Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the GioMoShow. Not on 88.3 FM like it usually is, but here in the back room of the WXOU studio, so it's kind of close. Not live, but we're here in a form of a podcast, and I'm joined here by another lovely guest here in the studio, Jake Massucci of the Oakland University men's basketball team, student management team.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for having me, man.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've had a lot of fun coming on your podcast, Jake's
yeah.
Takes. We're definitely gonna be diving into your little venture into the podcast.
I know,
here.
for sure. I mean, podcasts are so much fun. They're so much fun,
They
dude.
are.
I'm having a blast.
Yeah, I never liked them at first because I usually always preferred doing the live show in the studio, more
Yeah.
or less because of the equipment that was available. But kind of like figuring out the equipment here in the back room, I'm starting to like podcasts just a little bit more.
Oh,
I still got my love for the live show.
I think I'm getting you on the podcast train. I think it's part of that. But check out Jake's Takes if you haven't. It's on Spotify, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, just about every sport you could think of. It's interesting, very interesting.
Yeah, and I love listening to it, but I wanted to kind of zoom out and get to know the man behind the podcast. So zooming out, you're, like I was saying before, you're on the student management team of the men's basketball team. So for you, how did you get into sports? What got you interested in basketball? Have you just always liked it?
So growing up, I was very much just a huge basketball guy, and in my family, basketball was first. There was nothing else. If you wanted to swim, you're just not going to do it. If you want to play hockey, you're not going to do it. We are a basketball family, and it really starts with my dad. He's been a high school coach for a long time. He was actually the head coach of Royal Oak Shrine for about, I want to say 20 years, something like that. And then he was the head coach of Royal Oak High for another 5 years. So, and he's been on a lot of assistant coaching staffs. He was an assistant coach for Country Day when Shane Battier was there. And he was also an assistant coach for Brother Rice for a few years. He's been around. He's been around a lot, and he still works in basketball now. So that's where basically the love kind of grew in. I played basketball 4 years in high school. I wasn't crazy good, but I was just around it a ton. Like, my brothers were really decent athletes in the basketball world, so I really became accustomed to being at the basketball scene, being in a high school gym. I was in high school gyms all the time this winter because just looking at players and looking at the elite talent that's around there. Like, me and my dad would just go everywhere. It was so much fun. But and then that got me into college. I went to Oakland predominantly because I could do the student managing thing, and that's what I wanted to do. My dad kind of created the connection. He had a connection with assistant coach, Coach Smitty.
Oh, Smitty,
And
all right.
that's part of the reason how I got in. But the main connection was actually the director of basketball operations. His name's Colin Shannon.
Oh,
he was actually
Colin.
actually my JV basketball coach.
No kidding.
Yeah, he was my JV basketball coach for 2 years. Our JV teams were crazy. We would destroy teams. Colin he was an amazing coach. He put us in the right situation. So that's kind of how I got here. I saw what he was doing at Oakland. He started out as a manager, so I kind of wanted to follow in his footsteps, and here I am.
So for you guys as the management team, we were just mentioning it before we started recording here. You guys call each other Mannies.
Yeah.
So for that kind of culture for you guys, and for you guys being together all the time, kind of tell me. I guess we'll start with like the day to day. What is your actual role as student management? We'll get to that first.
Yeah. So basically, we're the guys doing the grit work. Okay. So we normally get to practice I normally get there like an hour and 20 minutes before practice. And basically what we do is get the water for the players. We have to get each player their own water bottle, and then we have to make the Gatorade if they want Gatorade. So there's Gatorade and water. And then we have to get all of the equipment needed for practice, whether that's pads. There's two different kind of types of pads, like the pads where you hit the big guys, and then the pads where like you kind of like punch them. Yeah, you're swatting at them and can swat the ball out.
Yeah, I see you guys using the big one, beat the crap out of Chris
Conway.
Conway.
Exactly. Yeah, Chris Conway's got his little big man pad, and I love doing that with him. That's so much fun. It is a blast, and he gives it right back to us, which is great. But and then we kind of during practice, we have a towel, and we're ready to wipe the floor in case anybody falls and there's a lot of sweat on the floor. So we'll wipe the floor. We make sure they get water. Anything they need to set up for a drill, we're there. We make sure the cones are ready so we can get those out as quickly as possible. And we're always moving. We're always moving. And it's not just doing that in practice. Part of it is also learning other things in while we're doing it. So basically that would be like looking at Synergy, which is our film site. And we would do a lot of clipping and getting it for coaches. So if a coach says, oh, I want he'll go to the video coordinator first, Jack Kramer. He'll say, Jack, I want to see this player in JUCO because they're focused on the scouting day-to-day for the games. I want to see this player in JUCO. Can you have some clips done? And if Jack has too much stuff going on, he goes, Jake or Evan Blanchard, another manager, or Gageby or something like that. He says, Jake, can you do this for me? Can you clip these for the players, get like all of his 2-point makes, all of his 3-point makes, all of that, and put it in a separate video so the coaches can just get it sent to them, and it's an easy like 6-minute watch, 5-minute watch, just all of their shots that they've done and see if they really like the player. So that's part of what we do. Basically, we're like on the court, we're very much involved in the day-to-day practice-wise, and then off the court, we really look at the film and basically whatever is needed of us. All of the grunt work, we'll do laundry, things of that nature. Like we'll do everything, and it's really good to just get your feet wet to kind of see how a college program works.
So for you guys, like it sounds like you guys in. Forgive me if this sounds a little bit rude, but for you guys, like obviously there's the players, but then there's you guys like more towards the bottom.
Yeah.
So for you guys, does that ever feel weird to be like kind of like the assistants and just kind of helping out the players like that? I'd imagine that there's a bit of a weirdness there.
It can be a little weird, but the players like are so good to us where it's okay. The players are unbelievable to us. I mean, we create great relationships with them. We talk about just life in general, treat them as normal human beings. And that's kind of at the end of the day, all they want, like just to, in some cases, like be able to joke around with people that they work with and see every day. And that's part of like what we can provide. We can talk about them. We're going through the same classes they are. That's something we can talk about. I just had a class with Evan Solomon this semester. And, you can just create great relationships like that. And you can look at it in the hierarchy like, oh, the players are up here, the manager's up here. I don't really look at it like that. I'm just really excited to be a part of a college program, and Oakland's really given me a great opportunity to do that.
So for you, that's kind of the relationship with the players, but how about the coaches for you guys? Like, what is it like dealing with them? Like, obviously they tell you what to do and all that stuff, but what kind of talk to me through that relationship you have with the coaches?
So coaches wise, I've always been very okay talking to coaches. It's just always been a part of my life because of my dad. So looking at it as the assistant coaches, it's a lot of like being told like where to be, like anything you can do to help them out. But they're also very gracious. Like Coach Smitty will joke with me all the time. And I love it. I love it. Coach Cove is the same way, Covington. I love him. They just joke around all the time. At the end of the day, they're just really good guys. I love T. Jones. He's a fantastic assistant coach. And looking at Colin Shannon, they're the same way. They're always just interested in what we're doing in our life. So in a way, you can look at it in the hierarchy like coaches and stuff. And when they need stuff done, they need stuff done. And they can be just as mad as us as the players sometimes. But the thing is, like, that's how you're building and that's how you're growing. So overall, like if you're looking at the coaches like that, it's kind of like they're kind of mentors in a way as well.
Mentor in terms of like running practices and
exactly. Because like before I was a manager, I would come to some of the practices with my dad just to see Colin and stuff like that, and I just watch and I'm like, this is what a basketball program should be. They're running stuff at the top of their game, and if you look at the Oakland basketball program, that's what it is. Everything's at the top of their game, and it's a real, like, this is a program. This is 100% a program.
It's Division One. Yeah.
Exactly. So this is what the top tier of coaching should be. So as an aspiring coach, I'm looking at them like, what can I learn from them? What can I take in my future future job. So part of that is just the mentorship of learning from them and seeing what they do on a day-to-day basis, and they provide a great example for that.
Well, that's a great segue. I was just about to ask you because I've known, like, ever since we met, you've been always talking about wanting to be a coach, and that's kind of that's a big centralizing goal for you. So for you, like, what about coaching is so interesting to you? Like, why is that the main goal for you? What about it?
So I really think it's about, for me, the development of young men.
Yeah.
And in my life personally, like, that's always been huge for me. I love watching teams come from the bottom and not knowing, like, where, not knowing each other very well to coming together and becoming something much bigger. Like, I love the development of a team. Looking at some high school teams, like, watching my brothers grow with their teammates was just awesome. It was awesome. They won a Catholic League championship their AJ's senior year and Anthony's junior year. And I just loved watching their team grow together and succeed like that. And that's all I want coming into coaching, is to help young players succeed. And that's either on the high school end, college end, maybe even in the NBA. I don't know where I want to end up. But there's just something about coaching where watching other people succeed is just great for me, because I mean, throughout my life, I've dealt with a lot of like health issues, which has hurt my athleticism and like having my team succeed in that nature. But I've always been able to like try to be the leader to help it grow. So like looking at coaching, it's just, I've always seen my dad do it and see his teams grow. And it's just something about it, man, that really speaks to me, really calls to me, helping the growth of young men. And I knew I didn't want to really do it in teaching. Like, teaching was something I like looked at and it was like, oh, it's kind of similar. But I knew just in basketball, it's something I know like the back of my head. And it's something like I can make. Like, we called a girls game, right?
Yeah.
And I could see like kind of the plays that they were running, like the horn set and like different kind of sets. And I love like playing that little chess game in a coaching aspect, or just watching a game on TV, like watching the NBA playoffs. It's all about coaching. Like last night, the Warriors played the Lakers. You're looking at that. The Warriors made like 16, 17 threes, but they shot like 0 free throws. Look at the Lakers. They shot like 30 free throws. It's just things like that. And the Lakers won the game because they were hitting free throws and they weren't really worrying about the three. And then if you look at pick and roll coverage, it's like, oh, the Lakers were going under on everybody in the first half. No, they switched it. They're only going over on Klay Thompson and Steph Curry because they're hitting their threes. And then later in the game, Jordan Poole, because he hit 6 threes, but he took a stupid late three. But
I knew you were gonna mention that.
but like, it's just stuff like that, I just love looking at basketball games like that. And it's just always been a big part of my life looking at it like that.
Yeah, and I could tell, and when we did call that game, and just kind of knowing like, okay, I'm getting a student manager here. This guy's gonna know a lot more than me, so he's definitely doing color. So that it's wonderful to see how much you like it, especially the strategy part of it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of it, when I watch basketball, very player focused. It's a lot on what the players do and their skill set. But too, you see it in a whole different way of the strategy and placing and putting the pieces in place for it. Like in football, football has a lot more emphasis on the coaching because the plays are like, here's one, they do it, and here's another one.
Yeah.
Basketball's a lot more fluid, but it has a lot of those same mechanics. So,
Exactly.
That stuff like really speaks to you, really interests you, it sounds
Very much so, because like, that's why I love the NBA playoffs so much, because you can see in a 7-game series just how many adjustments happen. And it's just off of, like each game. So basically, it's a lot in the pick and roll coverage, which is why I like it so much and I like the NBA so much, because that's really the centric of what happens. I mean, a great example of that is the Toronto Raptors Boston Celtics series in 2020 in the bubble, where Nick Nurse and Brad Stevens were adjusting off of literally everything. Like one time you'd see Kyle Lowry going over a screen. The next time you'll see Toronto in a 1-3-1 zone. What Toronto did, what I loved with Kawhi Leonard when they played the Warriors, is they ran box and one on Steph Curry. The Kings just did that in their series in the first round last time, which basically the players are in box formation and one player is following around Steph the whole time. In this case, it was Davion Mitchell in the Kings Warriors series. Like, just watching those little instances, it's so cool. And then Eric Spoelstra last night in the Miami New York game, they ran 2-3 zone and a 1-3-1 matchup zone. Like, just seeing that stuff and being like, oh, what are the Knicks going to do to adjust to this? Jalen Brunson's going to attack the middle of it and attack it with a screen and then try to hit a mid-range shot. You know, like, just seeing that and seeing the strategy of the game, it just makes the game so much more fun to watch, in my opinion.
My God, I'd imagine if you understand this much of it, because for me, like, when I watch it, it's so much going on. I can't like quite grasp it the same way you have. And well, I mean, just from all the explanation you've done, like, where did you learn all this specific stuff, the 2-3 zone and all this kind of vocabulary? Does that just come with experience?
So you learn a lot when you play basketball your whole life, like a part of like the zones and stuff. You run a lot of zone in high school. A lot of teams would like to run zone, especially because you have a lot of weak defenders. I was a weak defender myself, so I loved running zone. It's just a way to kind of hide defenders. So I kind of learned this vocabulary basically just really watching basketball and loving it. I went on YouTube rabbit holes every night, like all the time. And there's this channel I love called Thinking Basketball, where they really just dive deep into each part of the game, and it's so great just watching them. And they'll show you like adjustments, like that Nick Nurse Brad Stevens series. They go through every single adjustment in that series, and it's so great just watching the pick and roll coverages. And then they'll also show you the value of a player. Like, Steph Curry has the most value in basketball because of his ability off the ball. And people don't realize that Steph is in a different condition than anybody else because he can move all over the place. And the defense takes away Steph because they know, oh shoot, he's coming, you know, he could hit a three, and two guys will go to him. Guess what? It leads a wide open lane for Draymond Green because they're not expecting it. You know, like, so many people get better just playing with Steph, and it's the same thing with Jokic. Jokic creates that for other people. It's just so much stuff you can learn from watching basketball on a consistent basis. And I watch it all the time. Like, I've been watching almost every game in this playoffs because it's just so much fun. And I also have to do it for my podcast, you know? So, just kind of looking at that, it's just a lot of fun. And you can see where the coaches, like, actually didn't do something right. Like, I didn't think Mike Budenholzer coached a great series against Miami. They could have called a lot more timeouts and done things of that nature. And yes, you can, I've heard arguments all the time, like, the average fan will say, oh, timeouts. You know, that's like the only coaching argument they'll have. But if you look at Mike Budenholzer, you still have 0.5 seconds after Jimmy Butler hits that layup in Game 5. And you don't call a timeout to advance the ball. That was kind of dumb. And then you don't call a timeout and you let Grayson Allen run out the clock in the overtime. So, like, yes, that one was timeouts. And then you can look at other series like the JB Bickerstaff series, which I was super mad because I had the Cavs going super far. I love that team. I love that team. But and you look at the Cavs series, like, Bickerstaff, he would make the adjustments, but it would be too late. Like, Game 4, he made the adjustment to really have Darius Garland move off ball screens, and it really opened up their offense, but it was too late because Donovan Mitchell was not in a rhythm, and he struggled throughout the whole game. So Garland didn't have any help. And, you know, it's just things like that. And he never switched who he had screening. Like, he'd have Evan Mobley screening, and they would blitz the ball handler, which means they double team him off the pick and roll. And Garland would hit Mobley in the high post, but Mobley isn't skilled enough yet to create a bucket off of that. And that's where Mobley really struggled in the series. It's just things like that when you watch the game as much as I do, or you just continue watching a series. If you just watch one series, you can see the adjustments because you're just watching each team and you're seeing, oh, they're playing somewhat differently. Like Phoenix, Denver, It was way more physical in the second game than the first game.
Right.
That's why people couldn't score. And I love that the refs let them play like that.
Yeah.
That was awesome. But, it's just things like that. It just makes basketball so much more fun to watch. And you see it in a completely different perspective, watching Division I coaches prepare and fully go in depth on a scouting report and putting it into place. It just gives you such a respect for how much these guys know about basketball.
Yeah, and to hear people kind of complain and criticize coaches like that when it's such a different level of knowledge of it that it comes off as just like a cheap jab at somebody. And I can tell you have the utmost respect for that kind of stuff. Just
Exactly. And I'm not saying JB Bickerstaff and Mike Budenholzer are bad coaches. They are outstanding coaches. I just didn't think they coached a great series. Mike Budenholzer won a ring. He has a ring. He's a fantastic coach. That's why he's getting another opportunity. And he'll probably learn from this and get a lot better. JB Bickerstaff, same thing. He's a winning coach. They won 50 games this year. They were outstanding. And they're a young team. They're going to grow. They're going to be okay. It's like all these coaches, they know what they're doing. So if they get some slander, it should only be some. Because these guys know what they're doing. Stan Van Gundy doesn't have a job right now, but he is outstanding. I love his color analysis. He knows everything. He knows everything that's going on. He's telling me the adjustments. I don't even have to watch it. It's unbelievable. These guys know what they're talking about. If you look at each D1 coach or NBA coach, they really know what they're doing. And that's what I'm seeing every day, and that's why I'm having so much fun with it. It's awesome.
So getting to your podcast, and for those listening, this is basically what Jake's takes is. The little ride to the NBA that you've been taking us through. That's more or less what you talk about in your podcast. So talk to me. How did you start the podcast? What made you want to do that in the first place?
Okay, so this year, I'll take you into the summer.
Yeah.
I got approached by my buddy Gus Simon. Okay. He's a baseball player at Henry Ford Community College right now. Very good athlete. Knows what he's talking about. He wanted to talk about football this year. And he was like, Jake, wouldn't it be so cool if we started a sports podcast? And I was like, dude, let's just do it. I mean, I have no idea how to do it, but let's do it. So I got this audio recorder app on my phone, and we just put one AirPod in and on each of us, and we just talked sports. We did a whole college football preview. We had Michigan pretty high, so we were psyched, and then we made some bets on the podcast. It was fun. It was a lot of fun. Yeah. And then we had an NFL preview where we went through each division in depth, and I love that NFL preview because I got a lot right, which that has never happened for me. So that was awesome.
Start off on the right foot.
Yeah, start out on the right foot, exactly. And then we did those two, and then Gus got really busy. If you're an athlete, your schedule is insane.
Yeah.
Okay. I respect you guys so much because it is hard. It is so hard. So I respect you guys, and you having athletes on your show. I'm sure you're hearing about it a little bit.
Yeah. It's we had I had Markel Williams from the track team on here. He's telling me he practices sometimes 3 times a day.
Yeah.
He's a decathlete, so he does throwing practice and then running and then hurdles practice and weightlifting.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how do you go to school? It's insane to me.
Yeah. I mean, basketball schedule, they'll practice in the morning and then they'll lift afterwards. And most of them will come in and get another workout in after, after their classes and stuff. And it's just wow, it's another level to be an athlete. In Division I, Division II, wherever you're at, your schedule's the same. So I have an incredible amount of respect for these guys. They work their butt off.
Yeah.
It's very impressive. But getting back to, where was I?
You're talking about Gus being an athlete.
The Gus being an athlete. So then I took a long break. I was just watching football. I was living on campus, and I heard about the radio station, and I was like, oh, they have a podcasting director. I'm going to go meet him. I think his name was Justice Johnson. I think that was his name. Yeah. So I met him, and he's gone now, correct?
Right.
Yeah. So he's gone now, but I met him, and he taught me how the Roadcaster worked and how to record podcasts and things like that. And I kind of had no idea what he was talking about. I was really confused. I had no clue. And I thought he was a really cool guy, but I was still learning everything about campus. I was still trying to find my way. I was very entrenched in the managing thing. So most of my time was required there, and I was like, I might pick this up later.
Yeah.
So going into Christmas, my cousin Asher Smith gets me a microphone.
Aww.
And I'm like, ooh, I think I got to go back to this. I think I got to go back to this. So I did a month of planning, trying to figure out what I was going to do, like what sites I was going to put it on, stuff like that. And then I found Spotify for podcasters, and it took off.
Oh, yeah.
It took off instantly.
Easy to use. It used to be Anchor.
Yeah.
.fm or whatever. I use that. Man, it does make it easy. Not to be like an advertisement, but like it is like.
It's really nice. It's really nice, and it made it really easy. And I took off. I started with my first episode and really kept going. I talked to you about doing live sports. We did one of the girls' games, which was awesome.
Yeah, I remember you just like randomly reached out to me on Twitter. I'm like, oh, let's go.
Exactly.
I got some clout here.
Yeah.
Whatever.
No, so I reached out to you, and we did. What was it? It was the Purdue Fort Wayne game. Yeah, it was a Purdue Fort Wayne game. That was a really fun game to do.
We both wore pink for some reason.
Oh yeah, it was awesome. We both wore pink.
I'll show the picture right here.
Yeah, no, it was flat out awesome. It was a really fun game, and I was like, okay, this might be something I really can get to do. And I try to do it every week. I pretty much have succeeded in that part. I'm on episode 19's coming out today or tomorrow. I was with you again. You've been on it twice, So I've just been getting a lot of guests. We've talked, let's see, I've gone through NFL, NBA. I did a lot of NFL draft stuff. I think it's been mostly NFL, NBA. I did one MLB one, and we've done Marvel Comics because I love Marvel Comics.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and the Guardians of the Galaxy is out on Friday, so go watch that. But yeah, so we've done that, and might be talking NHL soon. Like, I'm trying to get as many sports as possible because it's just so much fun to see people, because I bring a lot of people on, and it's so much fun to see people talk about what they're passionate about. Yeah. Like, I had Aaron Smith on for the NFL draft, NFL mock draft, and I'm sure you guys don't know who he is, but he's my cousin, and it was just so great to see him like fully entrench himself into the draft and tell me like what's going on. Like, I knew what was going on, but we really could just dive deep into every player. Yeah. And then my buddy Drew Comer is fantastic with the NBA. We just dove deep into the trade deadline and then dove deep into the playoffs. Like, it's just so much fun to see those guys talk about it. And then we had some great March Madness episodes. You can just, like Asher Smith, he was a former manager actually at Michigan, and he really just dove deep into the Big Ten and told me how much he loved the Big Ten. And then you get a different perspective from a guy like Jonas Cerrone, who goes to Xavier, a Big East school, and he tells you about the Big East, how much he loves the Big East.
So
and
you got guys for like different zones.
Exactly.
And, like, you can only know so much about it, but like, let me get somebody who's in it.
I know, exactly. So it's just so much fun to really like see everybody else's perspective and add your own perspective to it and talk like that. Like the stuff we're doing right now. This is so much fun. Exactly. I'm having a blast, And that's just part of the podcasting. It's just really great to see other people talk about what they're passionate about. And that's what I love about it, man. That's what I love about it.
They make for great conversations, just like this one being a fantastic conversation. Thank you very much, Mr. Jake Massucci of OU men's basketball student management team. Really appreciate you coming on, host of Jake's Takes. Definitely check out his podcast if you didn't know any of the names that he was talking about. And you can find it out on Jake's Takes on Spotify. So once again, thank you very much for having me.
No problem.
And we'll be back. We'll be back live on Thursdays at 6, live at WXOU, or you can listen to this later on Spotify.